Hello, my name is Daniel Jones.
I'm Connor Lafferty. Ricardo Hidalgo is our videographer.
We are interviewing Mrs. Ruby Scheuing on Thursday, April 25th, 2019. So hello, we're very interested to speak to you today. We've heard a lot about you, so I'm just going to start with, what is the earliest memory that you have?
As a child growing up in my small town in northern Illinois, was playing with neighborhood kids.
All right. So what are the types of things that you played?
We played baseball, we played hide and seek, we played basketball, shooting hoops. We had a neighborhood school, and just being together. We did paper dolls.
Oh, do you have any specific memories from your early education or schooling?
I was just going through my report cards, and I got pretty good grades academically, but deportment, which was how you behaved in class, I didn't do very well on those.
So do you remember any incidents that you had when you...
No, they were just silly things, nothing that was anything big. But memories, I had some good teachers, and our classes were small, maybe 20 kids in our class.
No. All right, so when and where were you born?
I was born on the 19th of September in 1944 in Oregon, Illinois, in a clinic.
So you said you moved from Oregon, Illinois to Seward, Illinois. When did you move to Seward, Illinois?
Oh, wow. Within my first year.
So why did you move to Seward?
My dad got a job. My dad worked as a blacksmith, and he worked in a neighboring town for somebody. And so we just moved to the area so that he'd be closer to his work.
So you said your dad had a blacksmith company in Seward, Illinois. So what was that like, having your dad owning his own business?
Well, it was fun. Dad started out working in German Valley, Illinois for another blacksmith, and then an opportunity opened up for him to have a shop of his own in our town. And it was fun as a kid because it was, I got to mow the lawn at the shop, and my dad was very critical. He would stand in the doorway and watch. And if there was a rock to be hit, I would hit every rock. And Dad was always like, "Oh, you got to be careful there. You'll put nicks in the blade." And but it was nice if we played around in the community, just running around doing what kids do, and stop in and get a drink of water from the shop, as we called it.
So did you ever do any jobs for your dad around the blacksmith shop?
I did not, but I, as a kid, grew up mowing lawns for people, and with a push mower, and then I also babysat.
So do you remember any of the kids you babysat for?
Oh yeah, I had one family I babysat for that had 6 boys, and you would come there and they weren't even there. You had to find them first, and the sink was loaded with dishes in cold water, and you were expected not only to know where all those kids were, get them ready, get them back and ready for bed, excuse me, and also get the dishes done, vacuum, and so it was a busy time for babysitting. But I remember the kids, yeah, they were just everywhere, out playing and climbing trees and playing hide and seek. And
so are there any memories that you have of the kids that you'd like to share?
Let's see, I also cleaned houses and for a family, and there was a young man there that he was a special needs young man, and he always he would follow me around and make sure that I put everything, when I dusted, put everything right back where he had it. And if I didn't, he'd let me know that that isn't where it goes. It has to go over here a little bit further. And but for other kids that I babysat for, there was a family in our backyard, and their dad had been Marine Corps, and he had 9 girls still waiting for that boy, and 2 of the girls went into the Marine Corps, and they were girls that are still in the community in my small town in Seward. And so I remember them, and you remember them as little kids, and now, they have children that have children, so.
All right, so you said they were still prominent in the community in Seward. Do you ever go back to Seward?
I don't go back as much now. My mom lived there for quite a while, and then when Mom moved, I didn't get back there as often. I get back there now for, like everything else, a funeral for someone that had been there all their lives.
Are there any spots that you like to go to that bring back any memories to you?
My brother, I had an older brother that worked at the slaughterhouse downtown, and a lot of people go back to that slaughterhouse to get their meat, and that was always a special place. We'd always go back. I like liver, so I would go back there and get that. And cousins of mine I know go out there and still get their meat from that. Not much business in the area. There was one, when I was growing up, there was one gas station, and right in the middle of town, and he did some mechanic work on your cars. There was a feed store, and that's still there. And then one of my friends, her dad was a doctor, and he started a Seward Screw Products there. And they made some parts for Harley Davidson, and it was really the only big business we ever had in that small town, and that since has closed down. So my town never got any bigger. It was 200 people, and it's still maybe 250 now.
So do you see a lot of the same families that were there when you were a kid? Do you see a lot of the same families?
Yes, and I have 2 friends that I went all through grade school and high school with, and we're still good friends to this day. We go, I just went down to Florida to visit she and her husband, and another one of the friends that was also from my childhood, she lives in Florida, and so we each drove halfway so that we could get together while we were there. So I do keep in touch with friends from my hometown.
So where did you go to elementary school?
At Seward School, which was right in Seward. And then for high school, we went to a neighboring town. I went to Winnebago High School.
So did those 2 friends go to the same high school as you?
Yes, there was only one high school.
So did you guys remain best friends all throughout high school, or did you?
Yep, and still are to this day. One of them, as a matter of fact, she was the one that was going to be a nurse. She was the daughter of the doctor, so she was going to be a nurse. And so I thought, I think I'll be a nurse too. So she pretty much influenced me to what I was going to do when I finished up. So
what experiences did you have with them that made them become your best friend?
We just did everything together. We talked about things. We did homework assignments together. We were pretty much the same classes. And we were always the Seward kids. We were a small group, and when we went to the high school in Winnebago, we were always the Seward kids. We're still referred to, if you go to a reunion, as the Seward kids. So,
how many people were about in a class in Seward?
Well, we graduated from our high school we graduated 65.
65.
And from our elementary school, probably 15 were in a class. And then you were just in a class together. You didn't rotate your classes.
Oh, so at Winnebago High, you were only in classes with people from Seward?
No,
Oh,
no, we were all together, but we were always the Seward kids.
so did you really associate, well, obviously associated, but were you close friends with anyone outside of Seward in high school?
You had friends, but I don't think they weren't your closest friends, because the kids from Seward came home on the bus together, and so you still maintain your kind of status. But yeah, we have shirts that say that we're the Seward kids. So
Are there any teachers that you remember from either your elementary school or high school? Why do you remember them?
From high school, I remember my chemistry teacher, because I was not very good in chemistry. We spent a lot of time together with him, just kind of helping me out and, spending time.
Are there any members of your community that you remember?
There are. I have a couple of friends that are in their late 80s that were friends with my mom, that at Christmas time just write them a letter, and we do a newsletter where I have my kids will each write their own part of the letter and then just put it all together and send it. And they're always interested, because they don't have a lot of other things to do, so to get something, and then they read it over and over times. But I have maybe 4 or 5 of those people that I stay in touch with, but I don't really see.
So how often do you write a newsletter?
I just do that once a year, just at Christmas time.
So throughout your early teenage years, like throughout high school, did you ever think that you would ever plan on joining the military?
No.
So how and why did you enlist?
I graduated from nursing school. I was a 3-year program. And when I finished, I worked in my hospital where I had taken my training. And I wanted to do something, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to go someplace. I didn't know where I wanted to go. And so I decided that I would just go into the Army recruiter and volunteer to go to Vietnam.
Were there any places that you really wanted to go, or was it just, you just had no idea?
I just did not have an idea.
And when was it that you enlisted?
I joined up in October of 1966.
1966.
What were the most common things that you saw as a post-operation nurse?
I think one of the big things that I always remember is when these young soldiers came out of anesthesia, they would literally count arms and legs. And the first question that they always asked is, where was Joe? Where was their buddy? And a lot of times we didn't know where they were, because if they didn't come in on the same chopper, we had no idea where they went.
Are there any experiences where you knew where someone was and either they died and you had to tell them, did you have to tell them that they...
I never had that, but I have a feeling that there were people that did. I never had that experience.
How did they react when they counted their limbs and they saw that they...
Oh, obviously they were relieved that they had, 2 arms and 2 legs, and that they had taken care of. Most of their wounds were gunshot from landmines that they'd stepped on, shrapnel, and this type of wounds.
How did you meet your husband?
I met my husband, we were both on orders to Vietnam, and I had gone, after basic training, I had gone to El Paso, Texas, and to William Beaumont Hospital, which was my first Army hospital. And I met him at a party. It was actually an engineer party. And he was on orders to Vietnam. He was a company commander, so he was taking over troops to Vietnam. and then I went 2 weeks after him. And when he left, he said he'd find me a hospital that was close to him. So initially I thought, well, I don't know how that's going to happen. This is a war zone. But he did.
So when you first met your husband, did you know that he was?
Oh, yeah, I knew that was the guy. Yeah.
So why did you?
I don't know. There was just something about him that he was just a great guy. He had on his red engineer jacket, and I just said to my friends, that one's mine. And so we fell in love. It was an immediate thing.
So was there any like specific experiences that you had with your husband that like made you fall in love with him?
No, just his personality, a nice guy. We had some of the same goals. We were both going to Vietnam, and it was just, I don't know. There was just something that he was the one.
Did your husband insist on you converting to Catholicism before you guys got married?
No. As a matter of fact, he didn't know. It was just my idea. I had grown up with as a Methodist, and I didn't have as many religious background that he did, and celebrated very, very strong. He was very, very strong in his beliefs, and that's what I wanted to do.
What was your husband's assignment during the Vietnam War?
He was a combat engineer.
Combat engineer. What did he do?
Engineers were the ones that were first out. They had to clear the roads just to get supplies in, to get troops in. So they built bridges. They rebuilt bridges that were blown up, and did all the heavy equipment things.
And was he stationed in Texas before he moved to Vietnam? Is that how you met him?
He was. He was in El Paso.
In El Paso?
Yes.
So how did you start planning your wedding in Vietnam?
Actually, I did nothing. He did it all. I don't know how he did it. He was one of the busiest people I know, and he just set up everything. Everything was planned. We did take an R&R to Singapore, where I had my dress made, and he asked me, it was around Christmas time, and he had me eat this plum pudding, and he had put my diamond in there. So I actually had it in my mouth and had to take it out. And so he was a romantic.
So how did you react when you found your ring in the plum pudding?
Well, I couldn't figure out what I had in my mouth, and so I just took it out, and I thought, oh my golly. I was very, very surprised. I knew we were going to get married, but I didn't know that he had the ring.
How long after you met him were you two engaged?
Well, we met in late December, and we were that was of 67, so this would have been actually in 66, so this would have been in 67. So about a year.
About a year.
So when you first got engaged, did you plan on having your wedding in Vietnam, or did you?
No, I I didn't think about it, but he had it all planned that this way we could get married and then leave the next day, be finished with the war situation, and get on a plane and come home.
And so being married at Pleiku Air Base was so that you could leave right after?
Yes. Yep. Well, we flew with a Vietnamese general who was also flying to Saigon, and so we were able to catch a ride with him going down. And that was during the Tet Offensive, and they were literally fighting in the streets, and we couldn't get out from Tan Son Nhut Air Base right away because of the fighting. So then it was a couple days, and then we were able to get out.
So did you feel like you were in danger during your wedding?
You know, I didn't. I was just so excited about what we were doing, and then as it's engineer tradition to ride on a bulldozer from the place of the wedding to the reception, and so it was on a flatbed truck. They didn't drive it the whole way, but so we climbed up there and then came back down for the reception. We had a very, very nice, we had shish kebabs and a very, very nice laid out table of food. And we had champagne toasts, which my mom had sent me champagne glasses that we used for the toast, and they arrived safe and sound. We invited everybody, but no one came.
So you said you brought your wedding dress home. Does that remind you of Vietnam, or do you just remember?
I just remember the good things, yeah.
And so I was doing some research, and I read on the war memorial that you were married twice, once by a Vietnamese priest, and then once again at the Pleiku Air Base. Is that true?
Yes. We had a civil ceremony on the 21st of February, and by the Vietnamese, and had to go downtown Pleiku. And then our church wedding then was on the 24th of February.
So do you celebrate two anniversaries?
We did. We always
anniversaries?
celebrated two of them.
So your husband was in the Army Corps, so he built roads. Was there any like specific roads that he built then?
Not that I know of. He just took care of clearing all of the area, just so that, like I say, he could get troops, get supplies, and food. He was always very interested in feeding his troops well, but I don't remember a specific road.
So he was generally well liked by his troops.
Yes, one of them. He was a young soldier that he had a guitar, and he said if he would learn to sing Ruby, he would promote him. So he did.
Did any of his troops ever know you and meet you?
I did meet. Yes, there were a couple of them. There were also two of his troops that would drive the Jeep. It was about a 40-minute drive, and they had machine guns flaring the whole way as they were coming on the way to visit me. And I met them just, for a short period of time.
So you said you brought home a cigarette lighter from Vietnam.
Yes.
What significance does that light have?
It has my unit patch on it, which my unit patch I have just recently spoken to the person that had designed that, and the patch was authorized by the Army, but it was never carried out, so that it was never available for people to have. And the insignia on my lighter is the insignia, and then there was a sign outside our hospital unit, but never was there a patch.
So how could it not be accepted by the Army?
It was accepted, but they never carried it any further to make it happen that it would be a patch. But I did have him send me one, so I do have one.
You said that it was approved for your hospital.
Yes.
That was the 18th Surgical Hospital, correct?
That's correct.
And was that in Pleiku, or was that
In Pleiku, yep.
in Pleiku?
Yep. In the it says on the patch that it's MA, which is a mobile army. So our unit was one. I was there from February of '67 until it closed down in December of '68. So, and then for that short period of time, from January to February, we went to the 71st Evac, and they closed down the 18th Surge.
Why did they close down the 18th Surgery?
The military just decided it was going to be, they moved it somewhere, but I don't know where they moved it. And so then we just moved to the Evac, which also was in Pleiku.
Did you enjoy the 55th or the 18th Surgical? Well,
Yes. It was a unit where I think as a high school class, you guys, you get very much into the camaraderie of your friends and, talking to them. And our hospital, we worked 12-hour shifts. You worked either from 7 to 7 at night or 7 to 7. And you worked 7 days a week, but you weren't busy all the time. The only time we were really busy is when what we called a push, when the helicopters would start coming in and bringing the casualties in. Then you were busy and you just worked until you were finished.
So I imagine that since you weren't too busy, you got into like some shenanigans or played around a little?
We didn't, but we had a lot of, we did a lot of sunbathing. We did a lot of volleyball just because we had a yard area. We also did some community service. We went out in the highlands, the mountain yards, and they were much like the American Indian that were the roamers around in that area. And there was a doctor, an Australian doctor, that was in Khartoum, which was a neighboring city, and she took care of all the local people. And so we would go out sometimes and just help her to do what she did with people that she had ill, people with keeping up with immunizations, taking care of people, and we would help out there.
So since you were fighting a war with the people of Vietnam, did any of the soldiers feel like it was kind of like betraying them that you were helping the people of Vietnam?
Well, we were helping mountain yards. They were not communist, and helping the South Vietnamese. And no, but it was a very different war in that everybody in the country looked alike. So it was very difficult to know a separation between the North Vietnamese, South Vietnamese. We also had Hmongs over there, and the Hmongs were a part of Vietnam, and they now all came to the United States because they were no longer accepted in their country. So they came here to the U.S. and to be citizens.
And we have a large Hmong population in Milwaukee, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
So.
And they also are a part, if they, a lot of the veteran parades, you'll see the Hmongs that will be a part of that parade. And they're very happy to be here, a very, very nice community people.
Do you ever participate in any of the veteran parades?
I do. I love a parade.
So, I looked up the 18th Surgical Hospital, and there was a Facebook page that was kind of dedicated to it, to a bunch of people that were in it.
Mm-hmm.
So do you still keep in touch with any of the people?
I went to 2 reunions. I went to one in New Orleans, and then went to another one in D.C.
So are there any experiences you'd like to share with?
Well, it was also, I went to my husband took me, and then he took all 3 of my kids. He brought Kristen from Madrid, Spain. She at the time was there. Michael was going, he went to West Point, so he was out of there. And then Stephen was going to chiropractic school. So he brought those all together, and we went to the dedication of the Women in Memorial Service of America. And then we also went, not all the kids, but we went to the dedication of the Vietnam Women's Memorial. And there were 3 of the nurses that had been in my unit that were at that memorial.
So did you guys?
Oh yeah, I mean, it was just a nice reunion. We haven't really kept in touch except for the reunions. Like I haven't really kept in touch with everything. But I came back different than a lot of people. I came back with a husband. Together we went to Fort Lee, Virginia as a married couple. And I then got out on the 31st of October in 1968, and I had fulfilled my 2-year commitment. My husband was in for 20 years.
So the 2-year commitment, what exactly is that?
You just go in for 2 years.
2 years. And when you went in, were you a nurse?
Yes,
Going
I had graduated from school,
Nursing
so
school.
I went in so I did not take advantage of the training because I'd already graduated.
And you said you went in, second lieutenant, came out a first lieutenant. Is that correct?
Yes.
What was that? What was that like?
Well, you just automatically in 1 year, you got the rank.
So,
Yeah, what it was like, it was nice because my husband said he wasn't marrying me as a second lieutenant. I had to be promoted first, so.
so when you went into the military, did you only want to do a 2-year commitment, or did you plan on?
No, I I only wanted to go in to do my 2-year commitment. That's all and had I liked it, had it been something that I wanted to do, you could always, go for longer. But no, I just wanted the 2-year commitment.
Was there any reasons why you didn't want to stay in longer?
At the time, I was just going in just to go into a wartime situation. And I wasn't thinking that, I wasn't really thinking beyond that. I would just see how things went.
So you went to nursing school. So did you have any plans to become a nurse, like after?
I did. I planned to be a nurse, but when I got back, I was the new guy when I came to my new hospital, and so I got the nights, and my husband did not like that at all, where he was either coming or going and I was coming or going. And he said, I think we can do this without your working. So I was just a stay-at-home mom until my youngest son was a 6th grader at middle school. So I really didn't stay in nursing very long.
So after you were a stay-at-home mom, did you ever think about going back into nursing?
Oh yeah, but I don't know. I liked being a stay-at-home mom.
So for your honeymoon, you went to New York, and
Well, from our honeymoon, we first went to Japan, and then from Japan we spent a few days there, and then we went to Hawaii, a couple of days there. Then we went to San Francisco. We went to Las Vegas. We went to Illinois, where he met my parents, and then on to New York City, where I met his parents, and then we went to Fort Lee, Virginia. So we had 41-day honeymoon.
So what was it like meeting the parents after getting married as opposed to before?
Well, they tried to think that they already knew who we were. My parents felt that way about him just from letters that we had written, and it was great. My in-laws were the greatest, and my parents loved my husband, so it worked very well for us.
And you said your husband had a 20-year military career in total?
Yes.
When did that start and end?
1957, and he got out in 59 to 80.
59 to 80?
Yeah.
And you said he was in the engineering corps?
Yes.
Was he initially commissioned as an engineer?
Yes. Although he did a lot of teaching while he was in, he also was with the Alabama National Guard when we were at Redstone Arsenal. And he went to Commanding General Staff College, which is a nice college to have in your resume in Kansas at Fort Leavenworth. And but he did a lot of teaching.
so during your honeymoon, did you ever experience any protests?
We did not.
What do you think about the people who were protesting the Vietnam War?
I never really understood it. The people that were doing the protesting were people, and it was against the American soldier. They just went there because that's where their country wanted them to go. They were fighting for their country, fighting for these people's freedoms, and I don't know. It was just a very difficult time I've spoken with people who had people spitting in their face. We never had that, Gary and I, because we were different circumstances. We came home married, and we didn't come home like a lot of them went from the jungles to home. And it was just and people disrespected them. I mean, especially I think with with the African Americans, they were really nasty to them, and it was difficult times.
So how did you react to people who talk bad about Vietnam? Did you ever try to defend?
Yes, I mean, just with the same ideas in mind that, these people are fighting for you, they're the warriors, It wasn't the generals, they just wanted more troops, kept wanting more troops. The political people, they just wanted to win. And even when the Vietnam veterans came home and they wanted to join local organizations like the VA or the American Legion or the VFWs, and the people there said, no, we don't want you. You lost the war. So even the people that were in wars before us mistreated the Vietnam veterans.
So do you feel like the politicians should be held more accountable than the people in the military?
It was a lot of people that should have been held accountable. It was politicians, it was military leaders, it was just a lot of people in a lot of higher that just wanted to just keep this thing going, and it kept going on, and there really wasn't winning or losing. It was just, let's send us more troops.
So did any of your husband's friends perish during the war?
They did. He knew quite a few people. I didn't really. I knew one person that I had known from my hometown in Seward that is on the wall.
So did your husband and obviously you feel any hatred towards the people in power because they kept sending people into the war?
It was beyond me, beyond him. Obviously, you were saddened by the fact that why didn't somebody catch on? Why wasn't something done?
So during Vietnam, was the morale of the troops we don't think this war is winnable, so why are we here? Or was it?
I didn't have that much time spent with troops. In my hospital, they were out of there pretty quick. We kind of stabilized them and moved them back because you had to be ready for new ones that came in. So we didn't really, and those that were there were just so encouraged by the fact that we'd taken care of them and of their wounds, that I didn't really have a lot of time where I spent talking with soldiers about the war.
So did soldiers feel a hatred toward the Viet Cong?
Oh, I'm sure they did.
So if they felt a hatred towards them, why did you bring home a Viet Cong flag?
That Viet Cong flag, I don't really even know the background of it. My husband had that with his stuff, and he never really talked about that much. I think what it was kind of maybe kind of a meritorious thing that, it was taken from a Viet Cong.
When you came home from the war with your husband, did you ever talk about it at all, or was it something you kind of tried to move past once you got back?
He and I were together over there, so we had talked things out before. But I think you wanted to move on from it, rather than stay in the past. You move on.
Were there any things that you guys did not want to talk about during the war?
For me, I didn't have that many things not to talk about, but I think he saw a lot. My husband was there twice. He was there once in 63, 64 as a dedicated advisor to the Vietnamese soldiers. So he was just in the thick and thin of things. And then again when he went back in 67, 68.
So for his second tour, was he as much kind of in the front lines as he was in his first?
Yeah, because with the advisors, with the Vietnamese, they were very much into it, and he was.
All right. After you were married, do you have any memorable moments from your life after marriage? After you guys got married?
Oh yeah, first daughter was born, kind of interesting. I got out in October of 68, and Kristen was born in November of 68. And the military wanted me out of the Army. They did not want women having babies when they were in the Army. And now the military has maternity uniforms that they wear. But at that time, they did not want, the women were not supposed to be having babies when they were in the military. It was pretty much a man's military back then.
So after Vietnam, where did you go?
Well, we went back to Fort Lee, Virginia, and we were there for, let's see, I had 2 of my children born there. And then my husband got orders to go to Korea, which was considered a short tour. And that was a tour that you went on for 1 year and without family. Well, since we didn't have any school-age children that we'd be taking out of school, he decided that he'd just bring us over. So he just paid our way, and we went over and lived in Korea for the year that he was there.
So did you notice a lot of differences between Vietnam culture and the Korean culture, or did you really?
Well, it was different circumstances. I find that when we were in Korea, I didn't mind being there at all because we lived in a pretty much military community, even though it was in Korea, but with a lot of other families. So we grew up with our kids for that year together and did things together and did our shopping. And but we didn't really, I had a maid, and she was basically a babysitter, and she loved the kids. She was really, and then I had my youngest child when I was over there. So she didn't speak much English, and I didn't speak any Korean. But we managed. So I would have somebody that spoke English that would write her a note and just ask her that I played bridge with friends on Monday nights, and my husband didn't come home on that night because he worked away from Seoul, which is where we lived. And so I had asked her if I had this baby, if she'd be available, and just to stay with the kids. And so that worked out fine for us. So I had my son there in a Korean hospital, and we brought him home and had to naturalize him when we got back here. So he actually has dual citizenship. He tells his friend, "Oh yeah, I was born in Korea," and they're like, "You don't look Korean." Well, since both of his parents were Americans, I can see why he wouldn't look Korean.
So you said you had some friends in Korea that were on the same base as you. So do you still keep in touch with any of them?
I do not. No, I have not kept in touch with them. But we had one little boy that was with us when we were at Fort Lee, Virginia. And this young man, we got to Korea, and he knocked on the door. They had also gone to Korea, so it is a small world.
So did a lot of the families that were in Korea, were their husbands also on short term?
Well, they were all, they were on short tour, but, and the ones that we knew also, yes, they were there because they had small children. If you had kids that were in school, it would be much more difficult, but when you had ones that were not, it worked out.
So in Korea, did you ever intermingle with any of the Koreans? Did you ever go off the base? Or?
No. Well, we weren't really on a base. We were just in an apartment building that was primarily families of military people. But Osan, which is where we went to, the PX, which is the military shopping exchange, and then the commissary, we went over there to do our shopping over there, which you could just take a cab and go over there.
What was your husband's What was he commissioned to do in Korea during his short tour?
He was with the air base over there and did engineering type things.
Are there any engineering things that were of note?
You know, he just dealt with aircrafts. He dealt with troops still. So he ended up, we had one situation where he had actually court-martialed a young man that had gone to Leavenworth, and after we left Korea, we went to Leavenworth. And they had this where they would make you terrariums. And so my husband brought in this big jar, and it happened that the person that he had sent there happened to be the one making our terrarium, and the jar accidentally broke. So, but again, it's just a small world that he happened to be there at the same place where we were.
So when did you move to Fort Leavenworth?
Stephen was born in 72. In September, we left in 73, early 73. And then we were just there for a year because my husband went to school there. And then after that, we went to Redstone Arsenal, and that's near the Space and Rocket Center in Alabama. And there he worked, he was with the Alabama National Guard.
So you said your kids were still pretty young when you moved to Alabama?
When we went to Alabama, what were they? Maybe 6, 4, and 2.
So do they have any memories of you guys moving around to?
They do. They talk about the Space and Rocket Center, how they would, they couldn't go to it, but they could see it, and where they had their little playgrounds. So they were still, actually, I'm thinking they must have been older than that. They must have been 8, 6, and 4, because they would wander off into little places that were kind of where they weren't supposed to be. But they have, and we have. I do keep in touch with a couple of parents, just again at Christmas time, of parents that had children the same age as mine.
So do any of your kids still keep in touch with any of their friends from?
Through me, through our Christmas letter, and they'll. But I think they have on Facebook, maybe with today's technology, they kind of keep in touch that way. I don't know if they keep in touch, but they check on other people's stuff, because you just out there on Facebook, it's there, so they're aware of.
What kind of work was conducted by the National Guard?
Okay, well, they just training. It's training, and then in the summertime they had 2 weeks of training, and then usually the kids and I would drive up to my parents in Illinois and spend those 2 weeks then with Grandma and Grandpa while he was, and then he would come up and then drive back with us. But primarily training with the National Guard.
So after you lived in Alabama, where did you move to?
We then, my husband retired from the military, and we went to St. John's Military Academy in Delafield, and he was the senior Army instructor there.
So was your husband waiting 20 years to retire, or did he just retire out of the blue?
Well, yeah, he retired at 20 years. Yep.
So was that his plan all along to retire
Yes.
after 20?
Yes.
So he was a senior military instructor in Delafield. What type of jobs did he do there?
He worked with the ROTC, with the cadets there.
And
then he also had a precision rifle team that he was in charge of, and they were pretty good. They not like the ones you see on Facebook, but they threw rifles back and forth to each other, and so they were pretty good.
So you remember watching them?
Oh yeah, because they would go also to some of the community schools, and so yeah, we were able to do that. And then also for the parades, he had parades on Sundays when the weather got nice, and had, but there we went to a lot of the basketball games and the football games and soccer games, and because these were his students that were a part of that when we were there.
So, well, you were a stay-at-home mom during the period after the war. Did your kids ever ask you about the horrors of Vietnam? And
No, they didn't. They were still young. They were just at that stage where my mama wore combat boots. It wasn't anything that they talked about. No.
so, as a secretary in a middle school from 1985 to 2010, did you see any differences in the way the Vietnam War was taught? And
Well, when my husband came and he taught in Delafield at the St. John's Military Academy, I then did a lot of volunteering with the kids at school. And then there was an opening that came, and so my husband said, and I said to him, there's this secretary job. I don't think I really want to do that, though. I really like being a stay-at-home mom. He said, well, I worked the first 25. Now you can work the next 25. And I said, okay. So I got that job there, and the students always wanted me to talk about my time in Vietnam. And it wasn't that I just was uncomfortable speaking in front of groups. And so I would always tell the teachers, no, I don't really want to come into the classroom and talk. But I always wore my fatigue jacket, which is the jacket that's part of your military. And my husband, when I had gone to the dedication of the Vietnam Women's Memorial, on the back it says, welcome home, and then it says my name, my rank, and that I was an Army nurse. And so I always wore that to school. And so the kids were always kind of impressed with that because I had the jacket on, and they didn't know many Vietnam veterans. There weren't many teachers that were Vietnam veterans, and so a lot of times, though, the teachers would have on Veterans Day, they would bring in a lot of speakers that would come in and talk to the classes. And so, as a secretary, I found that that was the biggest thing, was just that was my wartime thing on Veterans Day. And when I left the school, when I got out in 2000, on that Veterans Day, the year of 2000, they all gave me letters thanking me for my service, and all drew nice little pictures with flags on them, and so it was really very nice. They all gave me their little packets that they'd done as part of a classroom.
So you feel like you were looked up to because you were one of the only teachers that was a veteran in the Vietnam War.
And they recognized, yes, that it was for my service, and yes.
All right, so you said that you were a volunteer for the Stars and Stripes Honor Flight. Can you explain to us what that does?
Okay. The Stars and Stripes Honor Flight is an organization that promotes veterans and thanks them for their service by sending them to Washington, D.C. for the day. They start with breakfast in the morning, and then they get on the plane. They fly to Washington, D.C. Sometimes we go to Ronald Reagan, and right now we're going to the airport in Baltimore. And then they're on buses. We started the organization with World War II veterans because they'd never seen their memorials because it wasn't built for 40 years after the war. And so then we expanded to take Korean veterans for their memorials, and then to Vietnam veterans. So it's open now to the three of those wars. They go there, see their memorials, spend the day. they are traveling with fellow veterans, and because we try to have them so that the World War II veterans would the veterans sit side by side, their guardians, with each of them go with a guardian that sits behind them. And it's an opportunity to speak with people that they haven't spoken to before, but that also were a part of the military service, were at different places. And finally, these people are talking about their experiences, about what they did in the war, and very, very proud of it. And it also brings the families together, because the families, a lot of times, the son or daughter, it has to be a generation apart for the guardian, and the son or daughter will be with them, and they hear stories they've never heard before, sort of on the outside listening in, because they're talking to other people that were in the same wars as them, and they learn a lot about their family. And at the World War II, I've heard comments that there it's each of the pillars of the different states, and it's a huge memorial. And the Korean is very kind of eerie. It has a wall, and it also has 38 soldiers that are full size. And it seems like no matter where you are, they're looking at you. And having them life-size just makes it kind of eerie when you're there. And then on to see the Lincoln Memorial, on for the wall, and then as you go past, and then there's also this statues of the 3 Vietnam soldiers, and on for the Vietnam Women's Memorial. And then they also will go to the Air Force Memorial. They go to Iwo Jima and spend the day seeing these various monuments and memorials, and then to Arlington National Cemetery, and they go to the changing of the guard. And that's a very moving ceremony. And those guards, they're there 365 days a year, and the special statures they have to be so tall, 6'2", very staunch people, and they have very, very their rules that they have to follow are ones that they follow for a lifetime. And so that and this is just in honor of our veterans, just to show them that we care. And then feed them usually on the buses so that they can get to the next place. And then when they come back again, they're on the planes, then they have mail call. So they get letters that their family members, friends have written to them. And they don't know this is coming. So they get a lot of tears. It's a very emotional time for these people that are, being thanked for their service. And in DC, when they go there, there's lots of people at DC, and they go to every single veteran or honor flight that comes in. And Wisconsin has 5 hubs, and then a lot of the other states also have them. So it's very emotional that people would get up on a Saturday morning to come out and greet them. And so I'm very proud to be a volunteer for this organization that supports and cares so much for their veterans.
So what is your role in
well, I do breakfast in the morning. I just help, and they get a breakfast sandwich. They get a bar, banana, coffee, a couple of kinds of juices to start their day. And then at night, I'm part of the homecoming when they get off the plane, just to greet them home again, and to make sure that we get everything cleared off of their laps, so that they're able to shake hands for the homecoming, of which we may have 1,000 people at the airport, just to greet them when they come home.
So have you ever been on an actual honor flight?
I went on as a guardian, and I also went on as a veteran.
What was that experience like?
It was very rewarding. I went with my son from Texas, who's the West Point graduate, and it was very moving to be with people that were in the same war as you were, who did all different jobs, and we came from all different places, but to stand at the wall and view all these names of people, and a lot of people know a lot of people on the wall, and it's a very, very moving situation, because it's just somber, where you get some sense of closure being there to thank them for their sacrifices, and they didn't come home. Because a lot of people have a lot of guilt that they came home and their buddy didn't, who was standing right beside them. And those are things we'll never understand, but they get a certain amount of closure by being there.
So, what compelled you to join the?
I was actually going somewhere at the airport, and I saw these flags, and if I see an American flag, I got to know what that's all about. And so I came home, checked it out, and sent in my application to volunteer, and I got on board in 2008, and it's just a very, very rewarding, what am I trying to say, just it's rewarding to be there with these people and to celebrate with them as they are going through this journey of learning more about themselves and about other people that were also there and the sacrifices that they made.
So you said you also joined the Wisconsin Vietnam Veteran Chapter, Chapter 1?
Yes. As there was, this organization was started because at the time Vietnam veterans weren't really accepted into other VFWs, into other chapters. So the Vietnam veterans started their own organization. It was actually started by Gary Wetzel, who is the Medal of Honor recipient. He lives in South Milwaukee, and he started this and then joined with other Vietnam veterans. And I just became a part of this organization just a month ago. So they do a lot of charitable things. They're helping veterans. They're serving coffee at the VA. They do presenting to groups of students at different schools. And they're just out there to help veterans in any way that they can.
All right, so are there any plans for what you want to do in the Wisconsin Vietnam Veterans?
I plan to do as much as I can with different organizations. A lot of it is fundraising, and the more monies that are out there to help some of the homeless vets, to help with people that don't have. I'm very fortunate. I've had lived with the man I loved, and I've had a family that I'm very proud of, and I have 6 grandchildren that I'm very proud of, and I think now that I don't have any people in the house, I have time to give back.
So are there any other things that you would like to talk about?
No, I want to thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.